Imagine walking into a Northern California courtroom today, Tuesday, April 28th, 2026.
It's a big day.
Oh, massive. Because the item on the docket is essentially, well, it's a multi-billion-dollar existential crisis.
Yeah, that really is the best way to describe it.
Right. I mean, on one side, you have the foundational legal architecture of public charity. And then on the other side, you have the blueprint for what could be one of the most lucrative initial public offerings in the history of Silicon Valley.
And standing right in the middle of this legal paradox are two of the biggest names on the planet.
Elon Musk and Sam Altman.
Exactly. And, the friction in that room, it isn't just about money. I mean, obviously, the numbers involved are astronomical.
Mind-boggling, really.
Yeah, but it is fundamentally a clash over how the most powerful technology of our generation is going to be controlled, funded, and ultimately, deployed into society.
Which is exactly why we're doing this. So we are pulling today's deep dive from a highly detailed piece in the MIT Technology Review. It was featured in the AI News Daily Digest.
A really fascinating breakdown.
It is. And our mission today is to really pull apart this legal and philosophical battle over the future of OpenAI. We need to figure out why a single judge's ruling in this specific case could completely reroute the trajectory of global AI development.
And the stakes are just incredibly high here because, frankly, this lawsuit forces the legal system to answer a question it has never really had to face before at this scale.
Right.
Like, it is very easy to look at a high-profile lawsuit between tech billionaires and just write it off as corporate maneuvering. But this is a battle over the foundational blueprints of artificial intelligence.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because to grasp the sheer scale of what is happening in that courtroom today, we have to look at the immediate legal mechanics at the heart of the lawsuit.
The nuts and bolts of it.
Exactly. It's what I can only describe as a structural identity crisis of the world's most prominent AI company.
That's a great term for it.
Thanks. I mean, it feels a bit like a community garden, right?
Yeah.
Like, legally set up for the public good, but suddenly deciding it wants to, I don't know, list on the stock exchange and become a massive commercial farming conglomerate.
Right.
Like, legally, how does a company even begin to navigate that kind of transition? I mean, how do you take an entity whose core DNA is a nonprofit and file for an IPO?
Well, that mechanism is exactly what the court is scrutinizing right now. Because when an organization is originally founded with a nonprofit charter, the legal promise made to society.
Then to the government.
Exactly, to the government, which grants specific tax-exempt benefits based on that promise. That promise is that the organization's sole loyalty is to a public mission.
And in this specific case, that mission was to build safe artificial intelligence for the benefit of humanity.
Right. The mission itself is the sole beneficiary of the organization's work.
So basically, the mission is the boss.
Yes.
Whatever action the board takes, it has to be in service of that stated goal, not, in service of making anyone rich.
And that is the crucial legal distinction. But as the source material details, the organization didn't remain a traditional nonprofit.
Right, they evolved.
Yeah, to attract investment, they established a capped profit subsidiary.
Okay, wait, explain how that works.
So the concept was to allow investors to put money in and get a return, but that return was strictly capped. And crucially, the nonprofit board retained absolute governing control. So the profits were structurally designed to remain subordinate to the original mission. But, preparing for an initial public offering, an IPO.
That shatters that delicate structural balance.
Completely.
Because an IPO isn't just raising a little extra cash on the side. It completely flips the power dynamic.
Yeah, it does.
If you buy a share of that commercial farming conglomerate, go back to my weird analogy, you expect a financial return on your investment.
Well, you don't just expect it. You are legally entitled to demand that the company tries to generate it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, a publicly traded for-profit company has a fiduciary duty to maximize shareholder value. An IPO forces a company to answer to institutional investors. It requires quarter-over-quarter growth.
Aggressive market capture.
Exactly. And constant monetization.
Which means the mission is no longer the boss. The shareholders are the boss.
Exactly.
So the company's legal imperative shifts from, benefit humanity to deliver dividends and stock growth.
And so the legal question at the center of the trial is whether a foundation built on a strict nonprofit promise can simply be overwritten by a for-profit, shareholder-driven reality.
That's fascinating.
The lawsuit challenges whether a board can legally abandon the original philanthropic charter just because, well, the commercial potential of the technology turned out to be overwhelmingly lucrative.
Wait, but if the original charter legally bound them to this nonprofit control, how do we even reach the point where an IKO is on the table? Like, who authorizes a shift that fundamentally alters the fiduciary duty of the entire enterprise?
Right.
This has to be more than just a boardroom paperwork error.
Oh, it absolutely is. The structural crisis we are seeing in the courtroom is actually the manifestation of a years-long philosophical clash between the leaders of this organization.
So the legal stuff is just the surface.
Yeah, the legal paperwork is just the current battlefield for a debate over the very nature of AI development. And that debate has been raging behind closed doors for a very long time.
Okay, yeah. Because according to the MIT Technology Review piece, the origins of this clash date back several years. And they center on profoundly different views of what AI actually requires to succeed.
Right.
On one side, you have Elon Musk, who, was a founding member of OpenAI, and he is voicing severe concerns over the potential risks of AI and the ethical compromises that he argues are just inherently baked into profit-driven AI ventures.
Yeah, his stance represents a really deep skepticism about mixing hyper-advanced, potentially autonomous technology with the relentless pressures of the stock market.
Which makes sense.
It does. The argument is that you just cannot safely develop a technology that might fundamentally alter human civilization if your primary legal obligation is to hit quarterly revenue targets.
Right. But then, on the exact opposite side of the spectrum, you have Sam Altman, who is the executive that steered OpenAI to its current dominant position in the market.
Yeah.
And Altman argues that a for-profit model isn't just a stylistic preference or, a desire for wealth. He claims it is absolutely essential for securing the massive resources needed to push AI innovation forward.
And neither perspective exists in a vacuum. I mean, to understand why this debate is so fractured, we have to look very carefully at the underlying physical and economic realities of the artificial intelligence industry today.
I'm really glad you brought up the physical reality, because I have to admit, as much as the idea of a purely ethical, nonprofit AI sounds great in a textbook, I find myself looking at the sheer mechanics of the tech. Like, if we know that training these AI models requires absolutely massive, mind-boggling amounts of computing power and capital, isn't Altman just being realistic?
It's a fair question.
Like, can you even build cutting-edge AI on a purely nonprofit, pass-the-hat kind of budget anymore?
What's fascinating here is that you've hit on the exact paradox that defines modern AI development.
Really?
Yeah. Let's break down the validity of Altman's argument first, because it is rooted in very hard physical infrastructure. Building frontier AI is not like building a social media app or, a traditional software platform.
Right, it's not just an app.
No, you can't just put a team of brilliant coders in a room with standard laptops and expect a breakthrough.
Right, because you aren't just writing code. You are processing human knowledge, and that requires physical hardware.
Massive hardware. It requires data centers the size of small towns.
Wow.
Yeah, it requires hundreds of thousands of specialized silicon chips, which often cost tens of thousands of dollars a piece.
Jeez.
And it requires an energy grid capable of supporting all of that computational load, so the capital expenditure is just astronomical.
We're talking huge numbers.
We are talking about tens of billions of dollars just to train a single next-generation model.
Which a traditional nonprofit is simply never going to be able to raise through, charity dinners, philanthropic grants, standard donations.
Exactly. To secure that level of funding, you need institutional investors. You need sovereign wealth funds and massive corporate backers.
And they want a return.
Always. Those entities expect a return on their billions. So Altman's argument essentially boils down to a mechanical requirement.
Okay.
If you want to be at the frontier of AI, if you want to actually build the technology rather than just write academic papers about it, you have no choice but to adopt a corporate structure that can attract unprecedented levels of capital.
I see.
The for-profit model, in this view, is a mandate of the technology itself.
Okay, well, that makes a lot of logical sense. I mean, the physical technology demands the hardware demands the money, and the money demands the profit model.
Right.
But then, let's look at Musk's side of the equation. Where do his concerns about safety fit into that reality? If the capital is a requirement, Isn't the risk just a necessary byproduct?
Well, Musk's position highlights the very real danger that chasing that required capital might completely sideline the ethical safety rails.
Oh, because of the investors.
Exactly. If you accept that a publicly traded for-profit company's primary legal duty is to its shareholders, you have to ask what happens when a safety protocol slows down a product release.
Right, time is money.
Exactly. What happens when thorough ethical testing of an AI model delays an update that Wall Street analysts have already priced into the stock?
Oh, man. So it's the friction between doing it right and doing it fast.
Exactly. When billions of dollars are on the line and an IPO is looming, the pressure to monetize is immense.
Right.
Musk's concern, which is heavily detailed in the source material, is that profit motives will inevitably incentivize cutting corners on safety.
Because if a company is racing against well-funded competitors to capture market share,
The slow, methodical work of ensuring the AI is harmless, unbiased, and aligned with human values might be treated as an obstacle to profitability.
rather than a strict necessity,
Exactly.
it's a collision of absolute necessities.
Yeah.
The undeniable requirement for vast capital to build the thing versus the absolute necessity for safety and caution to ensure the thing doesn't, break society.
Yeah.
And the judge in Northern California basically has to figure out how to weigh those two massive conflicting realities against a legal framework built for standard corporations.
That is the core tension driving the lawsuit. The court is being asked to untangle a philosophical knot using the tools of corporate law.
Which brings us to the real weight of this trial, the blast radius, so to speak.
Right.
Because if I'm an executive at another tech firm or a founder of a new AI lab, I imagine I am glued to this verdict.
Oh, everyone is watching.
The MIT Technology Review piece makes it very clear that industry insiders and observers from around the globe are watching this closely. But why does a dispute over the structure of one single company matter to everyone else in the sector?
Well, if we connect this to the broader legal landscape, it really comes down to how our legal system handles new frontiers.
Okay.
When a disruptive technology emerges that breaks all the old operational molds, the law has to catch up. And it catches up through precedent.
Meaning the first major ruling becomes the template for everyone else.
Exactly. The court's decision here will set a permanent precedent for the entire artificial intelligence sector. It will literally redefine how AI companies are allowed to balance profit motives with ethical responsibilities.
Wow.
The judge isn't just deciding OpenAI's specific structural fate. They are drafting the foundational case law for the industry.
So let's play out the potential outcomes based on the arguments in the source material. If the court sides with Musk's cautionary stance and establishes that the original nonprofit mission must legally constrain the pursuit of profit, I imagine that would send a massive shockwave through Silicon Valley.
It absolutely would.
Like every AI startup that spun out of a university lab or was initially funded by nonprofit grants is suddenly going to have their cap table scrutinized.
It would fundamentally pump the brakes on the commercialization of AI.
Really?
Yeah, a ruling in that direction signals that you cannot simply utilize nonprofit origins or, the public goodwill of an ethical charter as a temporary stepping stone to a massive IPO.
Wow, okay.
It would establish a legal barrier to hypergrowth for companies that started with public benefit mandates.
So it would force a heavy ethical restructuring across the board.
Precisely.
Companies would have to prove to their boards and potentially to regulators that their safety rails are just as robust as their revenue models.
It might mandate that these hybrid companies prioritize their original public benefit missions, potentially legally requiring them to slow down the release of new models until they meet stringent, non-commercial ethical standards.
The pursuit of profit would have a hard, legally enforced ceiling.
Yes. But let's look at the alternative.
Right. If Altman's vision prevails.
Exactly. If the court says, essentially, the market demands capital, the transition was properly executed, and the structure is legal.
That seems like a massive green light.
It is.
It basically says the immense capital requirements of AI legally justify shedding your nonprofit origins to satisfy Wall Street.
Yeah. If the court validates Altman's approach, it essentially blesses the hyper-commercial, resource-heavy race for AI supremacy.
Wow.
It would confirm that AI companies, even those with deep nonprofit roots and public benefit charters, can fully transition into aggressive, shareholder-driven entities to secure the capital they need to compete.
It would trigger an even more aggressive arms race.
Without a doubt. It would solidify the legal reality that in the realm of AI, the massive scale of resources required justifies a fully commercial approach.
Because other companies would look at that precedent and realize there are no legal impediments to prioritizing rapid growth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Growth and capitalization over cautious nonprofit-style governance. The entire sector would shift gears into rapid commercial deployment.
So what does this all mean for you listening right now? I mean, it's easy to get lost in the legal jargon about fiduciary duties, capped profit subsidiaries, and, billionaire boardroom drama.
Definitely.
But this is profoundly personal. It means that the way this judge rules will essentially dictate the rule book for the AI tools you use at work, the algorithms you interact with daily, and frankly, how much safety testing goes into those systems before they hit your devices.
Right. The software that shapes your digital experience, the automated systems that will increasingly manage data and logistics, all of it will be born from the corporate structure this court decides is acceptable.
So if the industry leans toward the hyper-commercialization that Altman argues is necessary, the AI in your life might evolve incredibly fast.
Very fast.
You might see massive leaps in capability year over year, but potentially with fewer safeguards slowing down the rollout.
Exactly.
On the other hand, if the ruling leans toward Musk's demand for caution, development might slow down.
Yeah.
The tools you rely on might be governed by stricter ethical mandates, meaning you get the tech later, but with a heavier focus on alignment and safety.
The implications really do touch every single user of this technology, which at this point is essentially everyone.
Yeah, it really is.
We are watching the legal system decide whether speed and capability or caution and oversight will be the driving force of the next technological era.
It really is a watershed moment. I mean, we started this deep dive looking at a Northern California courtroom, and it turns out we're looking at the crucible where the future of human-computer interaction is being forged.
Beautifully said.
We've unpacked how OpenAI's transition from a philanthropic nonprofit to an IPO-bound megacorporation triggered a historic structural identity crisis.
And we've examined the profound clash of visions here. Musk's demand for caution and ethical restraint in the face of autonomous technology versus Altman's pragmatic push for the massive physical resources required for innovation.
Right. And we've seen how the looming legal precedent will permanently define the commercial and ethical rules for the entire AI industry, rippling out to affect everything from venture capital funding to the apps on your phone.
It is a massive, incredibly complex knot to untangle.
It really is.
And, as we watch this play out, this raises an important question, something for you to mull over as the headlines continue to roll in.
Okay.
If the sheer computational cost of building advanced AI dictates that only massively profitable corporations can afford to build it, are we entering an era where the future of human intelligence is legally required to prioritize shareholder returns over societal safety? I mean, can a truly powerful AI ever truly be nonprofit?
Wow. That is a heavy, necessary thought to leave on. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As you navigate your week, keep an eye on that Northern California courtroom, because the decisions made there will eventually reach all of our keyboards and screens. Stay curious, stay informed, and we'll be right here to unpack whatever comes next.